Okay, Daily Life. I am Vince Mercandetti. I am joined tonight by Dana and Corey. How are you two doing tonight?
Awesome, thank you.
Pretty
Welcome.
good.
Corey,
Pretty
you just moved into the house. Busy day for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, moving sucks. This is pre-recorded, so we are actually on the official election night for Joe Biden, so it won't take up too much of your guys' time. But anyway, thank you for joining me. We are here today to talk about depression. Dana and Corey, I know that you both deal with it in varying forms. So let's get right into that. Corey, we can start with you. Tell me, what you've got going on, what you're diagnosed with, and give a little background story to that.
I'm diagnosed with clinical depression, anxiety, a little bit of Asperger's syndrome, ADD, and ADHD.
You just wrote a laundry list of things and
Just, it's so long that Alexander Hamilton wrote it. It's just pages.
yeah. Oh, running out of time. So are those correlated at all? Does one lead to another? Is one common with another, or did you just get a really bad draw?
I'm not 100% sure because I know that sometimes one can lead to the other. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it happened in my case, but I don't know. It all just kind of started with some things that have happened in my past.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, well, not good, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Dana, you suffer from a form of depression as well. What is that? And tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, I think growing up, I had signs of being anxious and depressed, just overly emotional about certain things. And I don't think I realized that it was that extreme or that was different because I think my dad was going through those things. So I don't feel like I really got it until I hit college and I realized people didn't react the same way I did.
Yeah.
And people's families weren't the same as mine.
Right. Oh, we all go through that in college.
Yeah. So I feel like I had these tendencies. And in college is probably when I started to get a little bit of help, starting with therapy for being anxious and being depressed.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, my family doctor had tried some different medications out with me, but really after my kids is when the depression became extreme, specifically after my second daughter.
I was gonna say, was it after each one or just one?
I felt like after Giovanna, my first daughter, that I was depressed, but I felt like I was going through a bout of depression like I had before, where I would just feel down on myself and there was no reason to be around. I felt like I was important to other people, but I didn't care myself whether I lived or passed.
Yeah.
But then I felt like after Alessandra, I started to feel unstable. So I got help then because that's when I felt like I wasn't in control of my thoughts anymore. And I was afraid that I was going to do something to hurt myself or hurt my kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at that point, I was on maternity leave. So I took a slightly longer maternity leave under that medical need and found a medication that I feel like actually really did work this time around. So that's where I am now.
That was officially diagnosed as postpartum, or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, that was when I felt my craziest. So a friend of mine came to stay one night in the midst of me going kind of nutty. And
well, describe that a little bit. What is going nutty? What is feeling unstable? What sort of things were you going through?
Just a constant feeling like I couldn't breathe. So that physical, I just felt on edge the whole time. When I wasn't sleeping or Alessandra wasn't sleeping, my head was racing. I literally one night was hitting my head on the wall in the bathroom.
Okay.
Just trying to get the thoughts and everything under control. I would hear her cry when she wasn't crying. And I knew that that was wrong. So I remember being on the phone with my friend and saying, like, I didn't know if I was going to make it through that night. I was so anxious and upset that I was ready to drive myself to the emergency room. And my friend said that she would come and help me that night, and she did. And then my work has like an employee assistance program. I called them the following day and got in with a therapist. And when I saw the therapist, she made me call my doctor from her office. So my OB, she diagnosed me. And they actually stayed open after hours to see me and get me on medication and everything. And then that's when I was like, okay, this is like a serious thing.
Yeah.
All these doctors are passing me around and acknowledging that I'm not crazy.
Right.
But that I needed to get it under wraps like that week.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Corey, let's go into your past a little bit. Obviously, you mentioned it stems from childhood. What talk about that? What were your experiences in your childhood? When did you first realize, hey, I'm not just feeling sad, there might be something more going on here?
I mean, my parents' divorce was hard on me. But what was bad about that, other than the actual divorce itself, was I was abused in both houses. I always had one foot out the door in each house. I was
Physically
always,
or emotionally? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
you're good, emotionally.
Okay.
I always had one foot out, never really felt safe, never really felt, you know, uh, like at home. Never felt that I could be myself. I always had to walk on eggshells, and it's sort of transferred into my married life, because I always figured that when I got married and we moved out and everything, then it would stop, but it didn't. And just the amount of abuse that I've taken growing up, and all sorts of family members that have talked about me behind my back, it's sort of created the depression that I have currently, that I'm talking about. Sorry if I'm scatterbrained. We've been moving all day.
That's okay. You've had a long day. No worries. Describe that a little bit more, like the actual emotion that you feel. It sounds like, from me, Corey, as someone who didn't grow up with you, it sounds like kind of all of your support system growing up was maybe not there for you, right? Like you're getting emotional abuse from your mom, you're getting emotional abuse from your dad, you're getting emotional abuse everywhere where you should feel at peace.
Yeah.
What's going through your head when that's happening? And are you talking to friends about it and they're like, hey man, like my parents are there for me, like they go to my little league games? Or is it, talk to me about that. Like, what's that like as a kid?
It's a lot of internalization, because the worst part about abuse and that depression amplifies is you start to believe all of the abuse that's being thrown your way. And a lot of the things that I still tell myself to this day when I get into the depressive moods have come from both parents. I mean, it's important to note that set boundaries, and I'm good with both parents now, except for my dad because I'm a little libertarian. But
just not currently good with him, but I imagine that'll be smoothed over one day.
But it fuels my moods.
What sorts of emotional abuse? Like, is it they're telling you you're worthless, they're cursing at you a lot, or is it like, is it like that? Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty just worthless, useless, and you're never going to be the man in the house if you keep acting like this. You need to be sure and swallow your swallow your feelings and swallow your emotions, because you're not going to be able to lead a household, and you're not going to be able to be successful if you are constantly in your feelings.
Okay. Dana, you were shaking your head through a lot of that. So you're in an interesting situation because you think that your dad probably also has depression, right?
Oh yes, I know he does.
Has he been diagnosed? I wonder this always about boomers, not just your dad. Did he actually go to therapy and go through the process?
Yes. However, it certainly took its toll on my dad and our family because he did not get help until much later in life.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like what age are you when this is happening?
my brother had just gotten married, so maybe I was like 24.
You're like a grown woman by the time
Yes.
he deals with his shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay.
so, you know, and I don't know Corey's situation, but maybe your parents have also gone through some other emotional things, right? And it may have been misdirected. I think like, oh, just I picked up bad habits from my dad, you
Yeah.
know? And then I think physically the way we are, we're both prone to this.
Mhm.
I don't seem like my mom reacts the same way to things. But again, I think I picked up just some of those bad habits, like just keeping things quiet until you explode, not feeling like you can talk to your family about those things, right? I mean, I don't feel like I got this stuff off my chest until I went to therapy in college.
Yeah.
And that was only the beginning of things. But shaking my head in a sense, because like you're saying, when you start to hear those voices in your own head, those negative things in your own head, like I feel like you get beaten so far down that you don't have enough support to often get yourself back up to like what is normal, what a typical person would be.
Right.
So I felt like, and I feel like this is my dad too, something small would go wrong, but it would feel like epic because I never had built up enough strength or enough confidence, enough calm to like deal with that in a normal way.
Yeah.
And then again, I think I am kind of prone to these things. So I think medication does make me feel as normal as possible. Um, I feel like the first time around when I was on medication before the postpartum thing, I was like, oh, this is what it's like to like wake up and not want to roll over and die. And I know that sounds dramatic, but I was just like, this is awesome. Like people just get up in the morning. I didn't know people just got up in the morning.
Is it like that for you? I mean, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, sometimes you're just not right.
Sometimes, but I will say since having Alessandra, getting help then, and I think finding the right medication, those feelings are very few and far between for me now.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, I didn't realize like other people didn't wake up and have to like psych themselves up for the day.
Yeah.
You know? So that's different, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I
I
don't
would
mean
be
to
too.
sound nutty. Obviously, like I have a lot of great stuff going for me.
Yeah.
I appreciate that and I acknowledge that, but I also feel like I've gone through some stuff other people haven't, and my mindset is like changed by that.
Well, so that's an interesting point you bring up, and I'm curious to get both of your opinions on this. I interviewed Jake yesterday about anxiety, and the difference between an anxiety attack and a panic attack. And one of the things we touched on anxiety is that everyone kind of throws that word around, right? Like, oh, I've got anxiety over this. There's a difference between feeling stressed and actually having anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Depression to me is maybe the biggest example of this in society, right? Like there is a difference between feeling sad and having depression. Can you kind of pinpoint that difference? Like describe what actual depression feels like as it compares to just you're sad about something.
Um,
And can you differentiate, in your situation, since you do have depression, do you know when it's one or the other, or does it just not matter? You just know what your feelings are?
Well, one way for me that I feel like was very different, especially after Alessandra, was not wanting to eat. Like, you hear that a lot, of like the loss of appetite, whatever. Like, I love food and it is a comfort for me, but like, I didn't even care to have that comfort. So with Alessandra, in the midst of it, I would wake up every morning and throw up just because I felt like like I had nothing to throw up, but I would. And I had just like no appetite. The idea of eating was like gross to me. So that was a physical aspect that to me was more than just sad. If I'm sad, I seek comfort. I'm like, oh, I'll make myself an ice cream sundae.
Right.
But this was like, it had beaten me down.
Yeah, like when you're sad, you might listen to a song to cheer you up. You're not throwing up in the bathroom every morning.
Right.
Like that's yeah.
And it was like every morning. It was just I had lost control of being in control of myself.
Yeah.
Even like physically.
Right. Corey, is it like, I mean, probably not the same exact thing, but describe it from your standpoint.
Well, I think the difference is the internalization. I think that if you're just sad, it's sort of, I sort of get the feeling that it's just like face forward whenever I'm sad. I can pinpoint the exact thing that I'm sad about. I can put it into words. I know how to get over it. I don't want to right now because I'm sad about it. Depression gets in and fucks your soul. That's the only way that I can put it.
That's a good way to put it, though. It is.
You go in and like.
I make that the title of this video, by the way. Depression fucks your soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, even in like the life groups and stuff, because I have this depression, I don't trust anybody. Like, I'm getting to trust a few people, but because of my depression, if somebody throws me a compliment at any point at any time, I don't believe them. I think they're lying.
So someone actually trying to make you feel better makes you actually distrust them because you're so conditioned to not believe good things.
Depending on the person, I'll admit, you and Henry, once I get to know you a certain level, then I can see where they're coming from. But like, I don't trust people for the most part.
Right. Now you both are married.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What's the best way to approach someone with depression, particularly as a married, as a spouse, because they're on ground zero, right? So like Dana, in your case, what does your husband do or not do? What can he do better? Not that we're looking to grill him here, but what? Just describe that a little bit, that dynamic.
I think something that makes me feel confident with him is that like he listens to me in a way, and I guess like he's reiterating things to me in a way where he's telling me like I'm not crazy. Like everything I'm saying and feeling at the moment is like validated. He's not one who's ever like, you just need to calm down. Just need to calm down. Is that
something we should all avoid?
Yeah, we're beyond like the breathing exercises. And he'll also do what it takes. I mean, there have been times where, he's been up with me in the middle of the night and just there to like listen. But again, I think the validating like has really helped. And I feel bad for him too a lot, honestly. Like, I think what makes us work is like he's been through rough patches where I know that I can help him. Mm-hmm. Because I, especially in the beginning of our relationship, felt so guilty that he always had to help me.
Yeah.
I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I do it just like any other girl?
Yeah.
But it's give and take. And like, we've certainly been together long enough where he's had some of his own issues, particularly like health issues, where I feel like, okay, I'm the girl who will stand by him and take care of him in that. So that's evened out. But yeah, I think just the
validation too, right?
I'm sorry.
I said that sounds like more validation too, right? Like it's validating you a little bit as his loved one as opposed to the other way around.
Yes. Yeah. Like I have something worthwhile to give to.
Corey, you're married to Tam, right? We can say that she's in a different video here. What about her? Because you've mentioned several times in a lot of different platforms that she's kind of the exception to like all of the rules when it comes to you and depression and anxiety. And why is that? What does she do that we can learn from?
Well, similar to what Dana said about just listening. And I like to cite my source before I bring forth this argument, and it's The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Fantastic book. But the craziest part about those love languages is they actually help in depression. At least with me, my top love language is quality time. So when Tamray just listens to me and spends that quality time with me, it helps. It's
like literally just being there is helpful for you.
Yeah.
To piggyback off that, I don't know, like what kind of help you've gotten before or whatever, but this just reminded me, Vince has gone to like multiple therapy sessions with me.
Vince is her husband, for the record.
I'm sorry.
Not talking about me, but continue.
Virginia Vince.
Yeah.
And like literally like just to be there for me. I feel like there's certainly been times where like he hasn't even talked. Like it's not an issue between the two of us, but just like he would assure that I would get there. And then having that person there to feel comfortable, can help me open up in some instances. So again, like just to physically being there. And the more they do, you realize the more they're not going to leave.
Yeah.
Right? Like the more they hear and they stay, you're like, oh, okay. Like they've seen it
they
all.
They earn their stripes.
I can tell the truth. I don't have to sugarcoat like what I think I feel.
He would actually sit in the sessions with you, or just like wait outside until you were done? Wow.
I
didn't even know you could do that.
I asked.
Okay. So as long as that's your consent, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I do think that made a big difference. I would recommend that too. Like if someone was not so sure they wanted to go through with something like that, but they felt like having a friend go, either wait outside of the room or be even in the room, I would say go for it. Like anything to just start to get help. Someone to hold you accountable, that you go more than once.
Yeah.
Right? Like that.
So sorry, Corey, we'll definitely get in a second. I just want to ask this question. What happens if you have to talk about him? Or has that not happened?
I don't really feel like that has been an issue for us. And I feel like if it ever has, I've just been singing his praise, like saying how grateful I was. I tell everybody, if I haven't posted something like this before, I tell everybody like he's an angel from heaven. Like,
I've heard that several times from you. Yeah.
So again, maybe I would have expressed how like I felt guilty that he had to take care of me. Maybe like it was a little awkward, I think.
But you never have to be like, yeah, he puts me down sometimes and then I get into a funk.
No, he's not that type.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
That's great. Corey, what were you gonna add?
Oh, I was just gonna say, that whole being there thing, and just even, going to the appointments is an extra level. But like, if you're a spouse and your husband has depression, I can only speak from the man's side, then that level of showing up and listening to them and making sure that they get maybe some depression books, maybe there's some podcasts that could help of some kind, because like men have the highest suicide rate in the nation. And it's really fucking dumb. Why? Because we see it as a sign of weakness to ask for help. And it pisses me off.
Yeah. So this is an interesting topic, Corey, because depression obviously can happen to men or women. For men, a lot of men don't seek help for the exact reason you just said, that it's a weakness in society for a man to talk about his feelings, let alone it admit he has, bad feelings and then seek help for it. And then for women, Dana, what you were kind of alluding to earlier, do you feel like you're perceived as overly emotional? And sort of like, do you ever feel that societally, like someone's like, well, she's just an emotional woman, or is it not like that?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't feel like it has been like held against me. But I do feel that fear. Like, it's funny, even wearing this sweatshirt, I was like, I don't know if I should wear this sweatshirt in this where it's being recorded and I'm a woman talking about a weakness.
Yeah.
Right? Because again, people are like, oh, a woman can't lead the country because she's going to be hormonal and like put us in a war, even though men have been the ones who've caused war. Like,
yeah, like we've killed way more people than anyone.
Yes. I mean, I literally bring the people into the planet and you take them out. But yes, so I do feel like there is that like stereotype, if you will. And so I want to be cautious about that. I don't feel like it's been a problem for me. One thing I would say as a mom with postpartum depression is a lot of people do say this is baby blues. And maybe with Giovanna, I had baby blues, though I think it was still extreme because I have the depression tendencies. But like Alessandra, I was legit unstable. You know what I mean? Like feeling things and hearing things that were uncalled for. Again, worried like for my life. And I think that the post-pregnancy stuff is what like pushed me over the edge. It's difficult to deal with a new baby, but the lack of sleep and the hormonal dump and all of that, like I was just out of control.
And the difference again being there, because I think this could potentially help women in the future, is you may have just given birth and you're feeling stressed or feeling sad or whatever the case may be. But when it's postpartum, you're actually not in control of yourself. Like is that the line you would draw to differentiate?
That's what I would say. I don't want to belittle other people who have felt depressed after their baby.
Right.
But I feel like I had two babies, like basically back to back.
Yeah.
And my experiences were different. And the second time around was like very extreme for me.
Okay.
And I think that is what was like my medical diagnosis that was a longer maternity leave and what have you, because the doctors recognized it that way. I don't know if they would have if I didn't feel like I was going to die and if I didn't throw up every morning and have like that physical part to it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Corey, when did you start seeing a therapist?
My first time seeing a therapist, I was in 8th grade.
Okay.
And
so you're about 13, right?
Yeah, I think that's about right. It's 2010. Yeah. But no, I started seeing a therapist then, and I've seen therapists and counselors off and on, and I don't know, they can help. I haven't really gotten a ton of help from counselors or therapists about it. But
is
they do help.
That's how you were diagnosed though, right? Like you had to see a therapist? Is that the process?
Well, I saw a therapist and then went away, and then actually a couple of years ago when I went to my new doctor, they have this tablet that you go in and you mark everything, and do you have this symptom, do you have that symptom, did you have something traumatic happen recently, and I went through the questionnaire, and the doc came in and officially diagnosed me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I went diagnosed for the longest time. I went undiagnosed.
Right. So I'm curious because you grew up in a household, Corey, that Obviously mental health was not the top priority in a household like that, right? I think that's fair to say based on what you described. How
Yeah.
did you begin seeing a therapist? Was that something like a parent is driving you to and from? Like, how did you convince someone, hey, I need help beyond what you're giving me as a parent or as a sibling or, whatever the case may be?
The school did it.
Really? Okay.
I, for about a week, could not stop crying in class. It's, I wasn't bullied. At least not then. I wasn't picked on. Nobody said anything. I just could not stop crying, and they told my parents to get me into a therapist. And that was pretty much the beginning of all of it.
Okay. And Dana, for you, you're a little bit older than that. You mentioned that your college friends, you kind of realized that this was a time to get help.
Mm-hmm.
What would you suggest, either one of you really, I mean, at either stage of life, what would you suggest to someone who's going through similar scenarios, where they're really, really down on themselves, or they're feeling maybe something that's a little more than regular sadness, like they can't get out of bed in the morning, like you said, or they're, vomiting, whatever the case may be? What would your advice be to that person?
I would say find someone you can confide in, like, again, where you don't feel like you have to sugarcoat it. I feel like I've told a lot of people that I've like felt down before, but it was down like, oh, I hate myself, or like, oh, I'm so heartbroken. And it wasn't like, no, I'm physically and emotionally going through this thing that's basically a disease, right? And so I only feel like once I became an adult, and especially when I was getting married and having kids, where I was like, I have more of a responsibility to other people. I need to like take care of myself for them. So again, I think I would just say like find somebody you can confide in, put it all out there. And if that person is like, yeah, that sounds like a lot, take their advice and see if you can see a counselor or a therapist or someone. I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Medication is important for a lot of people too, but I think being as honest and open as you can be, and having support. I don't think I would have even, I don't think I would have even gotten to the therapist had I not had support in college. It's like my friends encouraged me to do it, and I had one girlfriend of mine who would call me every morning for me to call the health like office or whatever it was to try to get an appointment. So like until I got in with somebody, she was like, oh, it's 8 a.m. you need to call, and I'd get on the phone and call. Sometimes you just need somebody else to push you up,
Yeah, that's
like
a
a
good
physical
friend.
therapist, but on the friend side.
Yeah. What about you, Corey?
Mine's three-pronged. The first one, like Dana said, get help. Doesn't matter if it's a close friend, life group admins, people in daily life. Open up and get help. The second is get into your doctor and get that diagnosis, because once you name your demons, you can slay your demons. It's 100% true. And I'm not being a Trump about it. There's actual stats that go with this.
Yeah, this is based in reality.
Yes. And the third one is recognize your impact. And the reason I put that in there is because depression, instead of having an angel and a devil like you see in the cartoons, they're both devils and you're fucked. But when you recognize the impact that you have on the people that are in your circle, then those devils get smaller. They don't go away, but they get smaller. So yeah.
I think I like the way that you said that, because again, I do think like me having responsibilities to other people was something that helped me to take this more seriously, but also your impact. Like this is part of the reason why I want to talk to people is once people acknowledge my feelings, especially like the therapist and doctor, and I realized other people were going through this, I don't want them to go through it. I don't want anyone to feel the way that I did. And a lot of people do. And I say all the time, I think I said earlier when we started this, like, I credit my OB with saving my life because they stayed open after hours to see me. I went in every week for like months just to check up on things. And it's like, again, somebody acknowledged it, named it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I could do something and educate other people also. And when you do name it, you sort of have a place to go. Like you can find other people who have the same diagnosis. You can read material. And while you're reading your material, you're like, yes, this is me. Like I read a book on, I think it was postpartum anxiety. And the intro, I was like, yes, I hear ghost cries. Like I hear crying when it's not there. It was just like, again, recognizing that this happens, you're not the one crazy one, and that you could find a community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did that last, the postpartum?
Oh gosh. I would say it was real rough for like maybe 5 months.
Okay.
And then obviously at that point my medication had kicked in. And then our lives were getting a little bit back to normal and I was getting back to work. And so the routine and everything was healthy for me too. But yeah, I definitely had a couple months where it was just miserable, and crying, like you were saying, almost like for no reason. Like I'd be like, oh, my girls are being good. It's a beautiful day. My parents are over to help me. And it was just like, it didn't matter because I was so down.
Oh.
It's a lot.
Yeah, well, that's why we're here, right? Let's finish up here with a little bit of a vent session. Things you hear about depression that need to be corrected or are just wrong or not helpful or set you back or whatever it may be, just anything you want to clarify that you can think of.
The like, you need to calm down thing, which I'm feeling maybe people might say more if it's an anxiety issue, because I feel like anxiety, you kind of work yourself up physically into a tizzy. But with depression, again, you may be crying or panicking still, whatever. So the need to calm down is like not helpful.
Yeah. Are there any triggers? I didn't ask that question. Is anything like put you there?
Well, I would say baby wise, the uncertainty of things with my kids, because it's so close to like when I first brought Alessandra home. So if one of the kids is sick and I don't know what it is, until I can figure out how to take care of them, again, and they're healthy kids, so it could be like an ear infection, but like that just like weighs on me. Like I'm ready to drive them to the hospital in the middle of the night and it's like a toothache,
Right.
And then crying too. It's almost like a post or like a PTSD thing.
Yeah. Any form of crying?
There, when you have a kid.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked, because there's different, I don't have any, but I know there's different types, like very distinct types of kids crying. Yeah.
There's this like kid cry where the baby is like unconsolable.
Right.
And like I've had to leave church before because I could hear the cry and know that this cry was not getting shushed and it was just like too much.
Yeah.
Like nauseating. No, it just brings that feeling back. But I don't feel like I have something that someone else will do or say that triggers it for me.
Okay.
It's more like putting me back into that time period.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you ever like asked or seeked out that maybe you do have PTSD?
When I was in therapy after having Alessandra and I mentioned that, the therapist did acknowledge that that's completely possible.
Okay.
Because I kept saying that I didn't want to like discredit other people. And she was like, it doesn't have to be like as a result of war, right? Or death or something like that. Like it's just a way you deem these reactions that keep coming back to you. And so she sort of said that it's like totally possible that that is the case, but it doesn't interfere with my day-to-day life.
Gotcha. Okay. And Corey, what about you? Any misconceptions out there you want to clarify or get off your chest?
Oh, there's one big one that pisses me the fuck right off. I hate this vulnerability as weakness. I hate it. And especially as men, I mean, you know, there's all sorts of conclusions that get drawn about men and women that are vulnerable and open with their feelings. Vulnerability is not a weakness. It takes a lot less strength to bitch out and hide your feelings than it does to own them and to come out and share them with the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to hide within ourselves, and then, you know, there's people that, oh well, you know, you're not depressed, you're just sad your team lost, or they say some dumb shit.
Yeah. Or you're sensitive, right? Like we get you called sensitive a lot, and that's a bad thing in, you know, most cases.
And what people don't realize is you are killing people if you say that to somebody and the right person. You are honestly killing them. If you downplay somebody that has depression like that, you are killing them. Men have about a 98% suicide success rate. Men lead in suicide successes and women lead in suicide attempts. The numbers are too damn high, and there's no social distancing and masks that can save this if we're still going to be shitheads to one another about this. Pisses me off.
Are there any, last question, is there any, are there any resources or anything that anyone can reference if they get into a situation like this?
I honestly, I have to look up the title of this book again because I passed it on to another new mom. But I will maybe link it when you post this.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can put it right in the thread if you don't have it on hand. That's fine.
Yeah, it was like a workbook for postpartum anxiety and depression. And again, that's where I was saying, like right in the introduction, I just felt like this book was speaking to me. And again, some of the exercises and things that you can do within the book, I thought were really helpful. And when you're in the middle of it, at least it makes you feel like you're doing something productive, like you're not going to be stuck in this forever. So I thought that book was really great for me. And then again, resources, like know if your school or your company has some sort of assistance. My initial therapy sessions were free. I think like the first 5 of them. My husband's covered under my healthcare. So since he went with me, they also had offered him sessions for free if he wanted. Just, you know, I think that's a great way to get your foot in the door, and hopefully you do bond with that person that you're seeing. But if not, again, it gets you in the door where your company or that therapist could recommend something else for you.
Awesome. Corey, anything to add?
Yeah, I think one resource, and I'll drop this link if I could remember tomorrow. Brene Brown is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. If you are going through, or you think you might have depression, I would recommend reading Brene Brown. Brene Brown does a really good job about explaining things and putting them into practical use, and she gives a lot of tools. The next thing I would look into is a book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud, because sometimes when you're in depression, you need to recognize the boundaries that you might need to set with one another to be okay. So I would probably say anything by Brene Brown or Boundaries by Henry Cloud. And like Dana said, there's a lot of mental health resources out there. There's a lot. So and there's a lot that are free as well.
Yeah, and there's a reason they're there. But I think, like, again, the average person thinks that that's not for me. That's for
Right.
somebody else. That's for somebody who can't cope or what have you. And again, they're there. And it's maybe better to take advantage of those and use those before you hit that need to call somebody in the middle of the night thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Great.
but,
Well, Corey and Dana, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I think obviously this is a topic that's going to be, I think it's going to resonate a lot. It's also very universal. I think everyone knows someone who suffers from depression or is going through it themselves or have gone through something like it before. So wanted to thank you guys taking the time out of your night, and have a good rest of your night.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you guys too. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
See ya.